6 months ago, I was getting ready to go up to North Carolina to do a marriage class with my husband, and I only had like a 15-20 minute segment that I had to do. And I sat down with the ladies at the fellowship time, and I'm like, what if you had like one shot, if you wanted to hear something about marriage, you're coming to hear me talk, what would that be about? And then you got the crickets, and everybody's like, I don't know. And one of the ladies jumped up and said, I want to know how you fight. And I was like physically, she was like, well, I want to know how you stop fighting, basically, how you handle conflict. And I think that's a pretty good one. I was like, I think I've been to a lot of marriage things, and I've never really heard anybody specifically talk about conflict. That might be because the Bible doesn't give us clear guidelines on how to handle marital conflict when it happens. It's more you should love your neighbor, you should care about what your neighbor feels, and it's all the general things. So I started looking to see if I could find something out there, and I love to read. I have a lot of luxury time to read. I know a lot of you have jobs and children and things, and I've got that season in my life where I have plenty of time. So I always feel like when I find something and it's really good, I like to be able to make it available. I feel like I have the time to cull through all the stuff out there, because there's a lot of marriage stuff out there, and not a lot of it is super great. So, I kind of went through and I ran across a book by a guy named Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, and he is not a fundamental independent Baptist at all. He's probably Southern Baptist. He will preach anywhere. But his book, actually, I thought, as I was reading it, was very, very informative, and it kind of gave a framework of how you can handle disagreements. So that's what we're going to talk about. I'm giving that disclaimer. Dr. Eggerichs is all over the internet. This book is about, I want to say 10, 15 years old. So he's done love and respect in the family, love and respect for mothers and sons, love and respect everywhere, So he's really gotten his money's worth out of this book. He's run it. There's workbooks, there's seminars. If you go on YouTube, if what I'm saying resonates with you, you can get the book. I listen to the audiobooks, a little cringy because he laughs at his own jokes. And it's so uncomfortable. I don't know why it bothered me. But that is very good. But you can go on YouTube and just put in Dr. Emerson Eggerichs, Love and Respect, and all of his seminars will come up. And he's been interviewed by all sorts of different people. So if you feel like this is kind of touching something and you want more, you have plenty of opportunity. There's hours and hours of his seminars, parts 1 and 2, and interviews and things. And so it's really good material. So I'm going to try and pass that on to you. So some of it's not new, like point number 1 on your list. Why do we fuss and fight? Number 1 says men and women are different. Not rocket science to figure that one out. But in Genesis, I put all of our references on the page. So if you have your Bible, you can turn there. But if not, I have Genesis 1:27b there. That's basically talks about creation and where God created men and women, and he created them differently. The way that Dr. Eggerichs talks about it, we as women will see through pink glasses, we hear with pink hearing aids, and we talk with a pink megaphone. Whereas guys hear with blue sunglasses, blue hearing aids, and they speak through a blue megaphone. So it's totally different. We could be talking about the same exact thing, come at it from a different perspective. And he says it's very evident when you go to someone's house and you can watch in, and you'll hear a woman walk into her closet and she'll say, I have nothing to wear. And that means she doesn't have anything new, right? She doesn't have anything she wants to wear. She has a closet full of clothes. She has nothing to wear. You hear the man go in the closet and he says, I have nothing to wear. And that means I have nothing clean, right? So totally different. Same exact phrase, totally different way of looking at it. So he talks about pink and blue sunglasses and the ways that we interpret things. So we are different. God created us, male and female created he them. The first blank you have there is we are designed to be different, but complementary. We know that in the story of creation, Adam was created first, and there was nothing, as he went through all the animals and named them and everything, there was nothing that met a need in Adam's life that he had. So God created Eve out of Adam's rib to be complementary, to make up the difference, to complete him. So that's where I have Genesis 2:20 there. It says there was not found an help meet for Adam. So God created Eve. So if we see and experience the world differently, and we have blue and pink glasses and sunglasses, everything, because we think differently and we see things differently, we can sometimes misunderstand each other. The compassionate adult thing to do, whether you're saved or unsaved, when you disagree with somebody, is to sit down, talk it out, learn to see other people's perspectives, and just reason through the disagreement. But frequently in marriage, we don't react that way, right? Especially when we know we're right. Exactly. So that's the problem. So because what I wanted to say, and in this next blank, we're going to write down, our husbands don't cause us to be the way that we are. So we have a tendency to go when we're fighting, when we're in the middle of one of those cycles, we're like, well, he did this and he did that. So he didn't cause us to be the way that we are. He is revealing to us the way that we really are. And it's vice versa too. We have the tendency to do that. So we're going to talk about this crazy cycle. And this is Dr. Emerson Eggerich's thing. And that is the time you all have experienced this if you've been married, if you're married now. Sometimes we get it in our family, but you'll have these periods where you get in a disagreement. He says something, or you say something, or kids do something, and then there's this, everybody gets angry, and you stay in these cycles, and you can be in them for a little while, or you can be in them for a long time. But we have seasons where we're just not clicking, and something seems wrong. So he calls the crazy cycle, here's your blanks, the no love, no respect doom of all happy marriages and families. So if you're experiencing a lot of fussing and fighting within your family or with your husband, there's a high chance this due to one of two reasons. Either you don't feel loved or he doesn't feel respected. We all find ourselves in times of heated fellowship with our family. Our husband will do something or we'll do something, and if he does something unloving, we'll react in a disrespectful way. Or if we say something disrespectful, he'll react in an unloving way, and that puts us on the cycle, and it just seems to continue. And sometimes, bills, children, jobs, things like that, there's like in-laws, and there's all sorts of stressors in our lives because we're surrounded by sinners. We are sinners. He's a sinner. You're a sinner. Everybody's a sinner. So you're going to have these times of heated fellowship. So in a perfect world, if we had a disagreement, we'd sit down and respectfully share what the problem is, try and figure it out and move forward. But instead, we're going to hunker down in our positions, and then we let it escalate, right? We respond as women with either a barrage of criticism, and then sometimes he'll respond by just completely shutting down. Has anybody ever experienced that before? You get the cold, just the, I'm done talking about this, and they'll walk away. Anybody? Well, the goal, this is your normal life, right? I know, like, everybody thinks Pastor's got his handle on everything because he reads so much Bible, but he's giving me the cold treatment too. So the goal of this book is to help us recognize the cycle, see it when it's happening, understand that it's very seldom the circumstances that we've gotten ourselves into. Have you ever gotten in a fight with your husband and it goes on for a few days and then you're just like, I'm not sure what we started fighting about. It's very seldom the situation. There's some coding underneath there that we have to do. We have to do some encoding, and we'll talk about that. But the goal of the book is to help us recognize it, understand it, and help us to get off of the cycle and as quickly as possible. So, and the way that we did that, God gave us help. Number 3, it's got God's way for marriage to work in a sinful world. In Ephesians chapter 5, verse 33, about the verse listed, nevertheless, let every one of you in particular so love his wife, even as himself, and the wife see that she reverence or respect her husband. There's very little written there's a lot of pictures of marriage in the New Testament. The entire book of Song of Solomon is beautiful, but there's very little written in terms of, when Paul goes in all of our Pauline epistles and stuff, when he talks about the family, it's pretty cut and dry. Husbands are to love, wives are to respect and submit, children are to obey, workers are to be good, honest workers, right? He's very particular about these are the things that we do, but it's very simplistic. So, but if we believe that every word in the Bible is inspired, then that word respect, or the actual word in the King James, I believe it's to reverence, right, is a particular word. It's there for a purpose. Why do you think God said, husbands, love your wives? Why wouldn't it be wives to love your husbands? Have you ever thought about that? Why is he commanded to show love, but we're commanded to show respect? Well, Dr. Eggerichs says that it's because God isn't into redundancy. He created women to love naturally. Like, how many times a day do you, or when you send a text, like, how many heart texts have you sent in the last? We just do that. Do our husbands do that? They only do that when they don't want to take the time to write, right? But you just send them all day long. I send Sam, like, I'll think about Sam in the day. I send him a little stupid heart thing or some dumb thing. Like, you know how we end the letters with the XOXOXO? Have you ever seen a guy end in XOXO? It's not natural for them. So God tells the husbands to love because it is not their natural response, right? So they have to work on love. Our natural response is love, which is awesome. They say he'll talk about it. I think, I'm not sure if I have it in the clip, but he'll talk about this, that a woman's capacity for love is like the last bastion of our society right now. Like, when little kids get lost in an amusement park, they go find the lady who's got like 6 kids hanging off of her, and she's got 6 water bottles, and she's trying to juggle everything. And he goes, and go to that lady and ask her, say, I've lost my mommy and daddy. That's the lady you go to. You don't go to some guy, some random person. Go find that mom, and she will help you. And that is representative. I mean, that is symbolic of what we are as women. We still have that. It's our capacity to love is what God gave to us. But we don't necessarily default to respect. So when he tells us to respect, that's something that we have to purposefully, intentionally do. So let's see. I've got on there, husbands are to love and wives are to respect. That's our basic premise. And in part 2 now here, we're going to talk about how to stop the cycle. So let me make sure I'm caught up. Yes. The first thing that we have to do, if we're going to stop the crazy cycle, is to recognize our mutual goodwill. So that blank is goodwill. Women naturally love. Pastor talked the other day about me giving him the last French fry every time, right? It's built into us. No one doubts it. If you ask children, does your mommy love you? Yes. Does she like you? No. Right? Not today. Haven't been good today, right? You do that with your husband. He says the same thing. He's like, does your wife love you? Yes. Does she love you? Mm-hmm. Or does she respect you is a bigger one. But does she like you or respect you? Then it's a little bit different. So you have to start off understanding that there's goodwill in marriage. I have 1 Corinthians 7:33 and 34 there. And I paraphrased it. I didn't put the exact verse down, but it talks about the husband is concerned with pleasing the wife, and the wife is concerned with pleasing the husband. That's one of the other verses that Paul outlines in terms of where he's talking about marriage. He does it 2 times in Corinthians and then in Ephesians. So everyone, we all have goodwill. We have goodwill. Our husband has goodwill. When we got married, that was the understanding, right? We want our marriage to work. We don't wake up every morning trying to figure out ways to annoy our husband. And they don't wake up every morning. We think that they do. But they don't get up every morning thinking, okay, how can I really annoy my wife today? So you have to start off by understanding that you have mutual goodwill. You did not marry Hitler's cousin, right? The problem that we have today is that our modern culture is biased. That's a blank in your thing there. Our modern culture is incredibly biased. All of the marriage books that are out there are skewed toward the woman's point of view. Have you ever thought about why? Because we read them. Because we read them and we buy them, right? Dr. Eggerichs talks about when he first published this, he spends a lot of time giving the opposite side, about the respect side. We all know, I mean, I've heard so many messages when you hear a message on marriage or you go to a marriage conference, it's the husband's love. You need to love. You need to be more loving. You need to be more understanding. And then they'll like skim over the respect side of the wife or the submit very carefully and then move back to the other. And it's because it's skewed. Everything in our modern society is biased. The cultural message out there that they're getting from not the church, but the culture itself is that it's filtered through the pink glasses, right? It's really through the lens of modern feminism. In all the movies right now, the one that saves the day is the woman, right? My husband got so mad we went to go see The Hunger Games when it first came out, like years ago, and Anna was like, I don't know, 13 or something. And when Katniss Everdeen takes that arrow and shoots the plane out of the sky with one arrow, he lost it. I mean, it made him so mad. He's just like, and then PETA standing next to her, she's like, wow, that is really cool. He was just so angry because of the obvious flip-flop and, you know, you're supposed to have the knight come in and ride and save the princess, and it doesn't work that way anymore. And all of them, it's all about the female and how she's like got to be co-equal, right? Everything's co-equal now, 50-50. And men are at fault. They don't care. They're not involved. They're too masculine. And basically, when they come to these things or they read these books, if you can convince your husband to read a book on marriage, pastor can convince him to read a book on marriage, he's going to feel like he's being just come at, you know? Because this next part, when men are treated fairly and with respect and honor, they will listen, they will serve. But when men feel that they're treated unjustly and in a dishonoring way, you're going to lose their heart every time. So our modern society, our feminist society, right, came out and said, you know, we need to fix this. Men are way too, you know, they're too powerful. We got to like elevate women and we've elevated them up, and we've told men they have to be more loving, they have to be more in touch with their feminine side, right? And they've tried to force them, they've bashed them in order to try and make them change. Some of them have changed. We see a lot of results in the public school system with kids, the boys that are growing up, they're a lot less manly, they're a lot less aggressive, and we're seeing that happen. But the older generations, the ones that we're married to, right, they're going to respond with toxic masculinity. That's what's happened. Because they're angry. They're being treated unjustly. That's the way that they are. So, you know, basically it hasn't worked. And that's what's the problem with our society. It's that worldly feminist tactics just aren't working. So how do you motivate a man to be more loving? You can't just tell him, you need to be more loving. You do that by appealing to a sense of honor. So on your sheets, I'll make sure I don't lose all this. On the second page, I have first, you must accept the following statement. No matter what my husband says or does, he does not have evil intentions. That's the goodwill, right? He might come across in an angry way or give me the cold and silent treatment, but deep in his heart, he does not intend to be unloving, right? Okay, we saw that men are to love, women are to respect. We know that's God's will for the way that marriage should be, right? And we know that the Word of God is our final authority. Is that a command, women, I think you should respect? No, it's respect, right? Respect your husbands. It's not like a suggestion, it's a command. So I'm going to play you a clip of Dr. Eggerichs, and I want you to listen to it because you all agree that it says that women are to respect, right? Men are to love, women are to respect. That's the way God planned it and designed it. So.
But as I thought about this, I realized, well, no one's really debating the love side. Yeah, love your wife. But then I came across this respect husband, and she's not commanded to agape love her husband. In fact, Peter hits the same thing. In 1 Peter 3, you win a disobedient husband through your respectful behavior. Paul and Peter are no two small apostles. And I wasn't raised in the church. I didn't have a Christian background. And I had to come to a point, do I believe in a revelatory worldview? Because Paul says in Ephesians 3, that which has been hidden in ages past has been revealed to his holy apostles and prophets in the Spirit. And I had to come to a point where did I or did I not believe what Christ said, man shall not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds out of the mouth of God. And I came to a point intellectually where I said, I trust Christ. I believe this. I understand the arguments against it, but I understand the arguments against those who argue against it. And so I came to a point where I said, I'm all in. But as I got in on this, I realized there's some controversy. Women say, well, Emerson, I don't feel any respect for him. It'd be hypocritical for me to show respect if I don't feel it, and I know you don't want to be a hypocrite. And everybody says that respect must be earned. He hasn't earned it, doesn't deserve it. He's not as loving me. I'm not going to give it to him until he's more loving. And the dictionary says you show respect to your superiors. He's not superior to me. I'm not inferior to him. I'm not going to be treated like a doormat. I'm certainly not going to walk on eggshells. Hey, you know what? I really think the profile on him on narcissism is correct, and you're asking me to feed his ego and narcissism, and I'm simply not going to do that. I'm not going to give him a license to do whatever he wants to do. Come with the pom-poms, just worship the guy. I'm not going to do that. I certainly am not going to be following what I think is your real agenda here, and that's to return to male patriarchy. That's really what you're all about, male patriarchy, and I certainly am not going to subject myself to emotional abuse. But other than these things, I'm really open to hearing what you have to say about
this. So that's his premise. If we believe, I love how he said that. I had to come to a point where I was all in. If this is the way God designed marriage, then what we have to do is understand that we are to respect, right? Love not as big a deal. That's the guys, and Pastor will deal with them. He's reading the other half of the book, and they'll get their own. But we're going to talk about respect. So that brings us to the second point there, where we talk about the flip side of the coin. Your husband must realize you don't mean to be disrespectful toward him. Pastor will worry about that. But you're just trying to help him, right? But you have to realize that sometimes his way of behaving and the way that he seems isn't intentionally meant to be unloving. It's just the way that he's coming across. So it's the flip side of the coin. So that second where it says, realize that men hear criticism as contempt, because whenever we end up on the side where we feel like we're not being loved, or he does something unloving, or something that we just generally don't agree with, we start off, our bent is toward criticism, or even positively suggestions, right? Where we want to help him. So, but men hear criticism as contempt. And that could be constructive criticism. Doesn't mean, you good for nothing, whatever. It could just mean, have you ever thought about doing it this way? They hear that as like disapproval. It comes across as disrespectful. And women feel that silence is hostility. And that's where we talked a little bit about that cold shoulder. When you see men in conflict with each other, okay, it's usually over words. Something was said that was disrespectful, right? And they feel like they've got to deal with it. They go from here, when they're with other men, they go from here to there quickly when something is done that's disrespectful. And they either have one of two choices. Either they take it outside and they brawl, and then they get it over with and they come back in and they're fine, right? Because they're guys and that's how they are. And that's how they operate. Or they have to walk away from it. They have to cool down and walk away. They did a lot of experiments with guys in labs and stuff where they hooked them up to all the monitors and stuff. And when they get in disagreements with their wives, it's the same thing as if they're, that fight or flight response that they have. It actually shows that it escalates for them. Whereas we can argue and our heart rate stays exactly the same. Because we're not exactly arguing. Women don't look at it as arguing. We look at it as we're helping them. We're discussing this, because that's what we do. When we have a fight with one of our friends, our girlfriends, this stuff, we sit down and we work it out. We go get coffee, sit down, we talk about it, we discuss our feelings. Our heart rate stayed the same. But when a guy, like when you start talking with a guy, their heart rate goes up and they only have one honorable solution, and that is to extricate themselves from the situation and walk away. Sometimes they don't have the knowledge to say to you, I'm getting really worked up right now. It'd be nice if they did, but they don't. they just get mad, they start yelling, they get like, ugh, and then they know if I keep going, I'm going to hurt her. So the only thing I can do is walk away. So they get mad, they walk away, they give you the cold shoulder, right? Because that's how they're designed. That's how God designed them. So for us, that cold shoulder, that walking away is hostility. For them, it is the honorable thing to do. They have to get out of the situation, or they're going to say or do something that they're really going to regret. So they will. They'll back out and they'll leave you alone because that's how they handle it. So men hear our criticism or suggestions or good intended comments as contempt, and we feel that their silence is hostility. Number 3, know that the best way to fully love your husband is instead by giving him respect in ways that are meaningful to him. So basically what happens when we get heated, we talk, men get heated, they fight. The male fear of criticism is it's very high. They don't like it. And I don't think we really understand that. We think they look powerful, they look impervious to what we're saying, but underneath they're very, very vulnerable. In the male in the species is often labeled as the one that likes to get into fights, responds to the call of war, protects the home with violence if necessary. Dr. Eggeridge talks a lot about, like, your husband believes in his heart that if he was ever in a situation where, like, you were attacked, that he would die for you. And they believe that. They do. And we should believe that they would. We see that in our society just recently with President Trump's assassination attempt. The man that gave his life that day was protecting his wife and daughters. He jumped in front, took the bullet. Right? That's what men will do for us. And sometimes we take that for granted. That's something that's built into them. And that's just the way that they think. And when they don't handle conflict as well as we do, but they are willing, their good intentions, their willingness to love us to that point, to love us like they would their own body, that's where we have to start. So that third thing, we talk about giving him respect in ways that are meaningful to him. We show love, we show our affection towards our husband in ways that would be meaningful to us. But we're going to learn about ways that are meaningful to them because it's different, because men and women are different. So we're going to do that in the second half. I'm going to give you guys a little bit of a break. You can refill your coffee or go to the restroom. We'll do it's 10:35. I'll give you 5 minutes to refill coffee, get some more fruit. When you come back, we're going to talk a little bit about how to do that with our acronym. And I'll give you your homework for the day. So you got 5 minutes. We're going to talk about how we communicate different. Remember, we were talking about men and women communicating differently. And I found this. I thought it was pretty good.
Communicate. That's the word. Communication. You have to learn how your spouse communicates. That takes time. Men and women communicate differently. It took me 2 years of marriage to figure out my wife will never tell me to do anything around our home. If Tammy wants me to do something, she'll ask me a question. It's from the question that I got to stand there and figure out what it is she wants me to do. Simple example, say I leave a pair of my underwear in the middle of the bedroom floor, which frosts my wife. That's her word when she's angry. That just frosts me, Jeffrey. If I'm not frosting her, I'm driving her up a wall. That's another one. Kids would come in. Where's Mom? She's up the wall with frostbite. That's all I know. You won't believe what put her there, man. It was that pair of underwear in the middle of the bedroom floor. You're looking at the most powerful piece of cotton on planet Earth. So I leave my underwear in the middle of the room. Would she come to me and say to me, pick those up? That's 3 words. Hey, pick those up. 3 words! Would she say them? No, because that would be simple, direct, and right to the point. And at that moment, we would be communicating at the highest human level. The way God, the Creator, intended it, through language. She looks at me, looks at my underwear, and then asks, are those yours? I sure hope they are, otherwise I got a few questions of my own. What do you want? That's the only question a man has for his wife. What do you want? Quit talking in code and tell me what you want. My favorite question, we weren't married 2 months. I'm leaving the house. I got golf clubs on my shoulder, got golf shoes in my hand, and everybody knows what she asked me. Where you going? I was only married a couple months. I didn't know any better. I looked at I'm going bowling, Columbo. What do you If you're taking notes, that would be the wrong answer. An hour later, I was still in my living room. Come on, tell me, what is this about? Please, let me know, please. I can make the back nine, just let me know. It's about knowing the right answer. That's why your beautiful, intelligent wife would ask such a banal question. I know better today. If I'm leaving the house with golf clubs on my shoulder today and Tammy says, where you going? We'll put these in the car, baby. I'm going to come back and mow our lawn. That's just practicing leaving for golf.
So we speak in code, right? So do our husbands. They speak in code too. They think that they don't, but they really do. So we're going to talk about, we're going to use an acronym, and I have it up on the board, and we're going to fill it in. As I go through each one of these, he does this in the book. So you get in the situation where your husband says or does something unloving, okay? There's a good chance that he feels disrespected. So there's 6 reasons for this, 6 areas in every man's life where respect is super important to him. So we talked about how you need to respect him in ways that he can appreciate, not the way that we feel like we need to tell him. He's going to take our little emoji hearts all day long, but you can actually physically, emotionally see a change in your husband when you start to respect him the way that he wants to be respected. And I tried this myself. I don't do things or tell you things unless I try it. So I'm going to tell you a little bit about how my husband reacted to some of these. I'm going to give you some homework to do. And then in each one of these, at the end of every one, I'm going to ask a question. What are some ways that we can show respect in this particular area? And I'm going to give you some ideas. And if you have some ideas yourself, you can feel free to talk back and everything. But we're going to go through each one. And that's where this letter comes in. I put a card in everybody's folder. Those of you that are married, it goes to your husband. Don't send it to, your best friend or anything. You're going to write a card to your husband. Those of you who are not married, you can practice on your dad or your brother, or your father. Yeah, your father, your brother. Everybody's got men in their life, and all men like to be treated this way. In the work environment, if we work at a job, we automatically treat guys with a certain amount of respect, especially if they're our boss or whatever. But when it comes to family, our sons, our husbands and stuff, sometimes we get a little bit, I don't know. There's a story he tells in the book about a wife that went to go visit her husband, and she's just like, he was that guy. He couldn't keep his underwear off the floor, right? Just like super not helpful around the house. And she got like where her respect for him was just kind of like out the window. And then she went to visit him at work one day, and she sat, because he had a meeting and he was talking with someone, and she sat outside and she watched his secretary and how she deferred to him, and everybody was coming in and talking about what a great boss he was. And like, she saw him through the eyes of somebody else, the people that he worked with. And then she was like, well, no wonder he likes being at work. They treat him a lot better than we do at the house, right? So men want to be respected in ways that are important to them, not the ways we feel that they want it. So as we're going through, you're going to have to write a letter of respect, not a letter of love. You guys do that all the time. You send your husband the little love text. You put notes. You should put notes in there, like around when they go. When Joel goes places, like I'll put a little note in his suitcase sometimes if I can slip it in, But I had done that for years. I did that. Bible college, they drilled into my head, you have to work intentionally on your marriage. So leave them little notes. They love little notes. My husband loves notes. But there was a difference. I wrote him a respect note, and we'll talk about that later. And he still has it. Like all the little notes and stuff he reads, and they're sweet, and then he'll kind of toss them away. He still has the note that I gave him. He kept it because it was the way that he wanted. I was loving him the way that he wanted to be loved, with respect. So we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about how to write a letter of respect at the end. We'll review that. But that's what this is for. So, chairs. on the board. Let me see if I have it. Yeah. Love and Respect provides ladies with the acronym CHAIRS. It has no meaning. I don't know why he chose it. He has never given a good answer for it. I'm like, I kind of think of it like the throne, like every man has his kingdom and his throne, so CHAIRS might help you think. But he came up with CHAIRS to teach wives how to show the kind of respect that your husband needs. So CHAIRS is your decoder to help you figure out what you may be doing that is making your husband feel disrespected. So we're going to go through each one. The first one is conquest. Conquest. This is your husband's desire to work and to achieve. When a man meets another man, what's the first question they ask? What do you do? What do you do? Yeah. Whenever women meet, they go, how many kids do you have? Right? Like, how long have you been married? Right? All sorts of personal things, What kind of coffee do you want to get at next door? Right? But men, it's what do you do? Because that's what's built into them. A man wants a woman who believes in him and what he does. Now, for some men, their work is meaningful, right? For other men, they find meaning in what their work is it causes them to be able to do. So he might not be like, if somebody's out there and they're a lawyer or a congressman or something, they find great meaning in what they're doing, But even the guy that's just, digging ditches or whatever, that hard work he takes pride in because it gives him a paycheck to where he can take care of his family. So for some of them, their work is meaningful intrinsically. The other ones, that work allows them to provide. And for every man, providing for his family is a great source of pride or shame. There's an entire industry, life insurance industry. All the ladies here are like, if I pass first, then they'll be okay. But guys worry. And there's a whole industry out there where because guys are worried about providing for their family even after they're gone. Right? We don't think about it. It's like, I'm gone. Maybe he'll get married again or something. I don't know. But it's like the last thing. But whenever insurance people come and they're looking for life insurance, they go after the husband, the man, because of that innate need to provide for his family. So, and some husbands can't win for lose, right? Because some of us ladies, we want more. We're going to talk a little bit about a lady later who wants more, who sees it. We go on Pinterest and we're like, oh, I wish I had that, or I wish I had that. That will push your husband to work more. And then we'll get mad because he's working more. He's not spending any time with the family. Did anybody see the pastor shared a video yesterday of a guy and he's talking? If you haven't, go on his Facebook or Instagram feed. He loves to share these things. But it was a guy and he's saying, my wife sat down with me and I was devastated because she told me, me and the kids, we're used to being without you. It's like when you're here, it's more difficult because we've learned how to live without you because he was working so much. He wasn't there. They had their own thing going on. And when he would come home, he thought he was involved in the family, but she's like, you're in the pictures. It's great. And he's like, well, look at the house. Look at the cars. Look what I've done. And she's like, but we don't have you. So it's kind of a catch-22 for them because they can't win for lose. What are some of the ways that we can show respect for what our husband does? Does anybody have any ideas?
Listen to them when they come home.
Yeah, that's actually one of the ones he said. Listen to their stories, their work stories, with engagement and interest. It might not be all that exciting, but if you listen, if you take the time to listen, that hot tub that we have, it's wonderful, but I have to sit and listen. And I just enjoy the hot tub, but I get we can't just sit in the hot tub and enjoy it. It's got to be he tells me about everything that he's doing at the church. We're doing this. We're going to interview this person. I'm like, But I'm in the hot tub, so I don't have anything to complain about. But sometimes, you just listen when they're talking about work because they get really excited talking about work. Not so much about the kids or, whatever, your vacation or whatever, but they do. They really engage in that. So he had on here to express to him how you believe in his calling. Some guys have a calling. They all have, work dreams and what they want to do and have faith. Tell them that you respect it and You have faith in their work path and what they're doing. Encouraging him to dream big with his career goals is another thing, as long as it's all in balance. So if you were to write your respect letter on conquest, right, that would be something that you could say. You could say, I thank you for all the years that you've worked and provided and taken care of the family. And I respect you for that. There's the words that you have to use. You don't say, I love you because you do this, right? For Dr. Eggerichs says, you can either do this in word or you can do this in writing. He wanted it in writing, but he talks about in words too. You take a moment to think about something that you respect about your husband in terms of conquest. And later, when you're in a quiet moment with him, you say, I was thinking about you today and about how well you, and you fill that in. So we work and provide for our family. And I just want you to know that I really respect you for that. I really respect that about you. So not love, respect. Use the words that are important to him. And then after you say that, don't wait for a response. Just get up and go do something and leave him alone and see what happens, right? He says you'll find him later, like doing the dishes or something. So we'll see. But anyway, so C is for conquest, his desire to work and achieve. Very, very important to him. The next two are very similar, right? We have hierarchy, HIRARCHY, and authority. All right. Hierarchy is his desire to protect and provide. Authority is his desire to serve and to lead. Okay, hierarchy, as we're talking about them, is more about the way that God designed the family. And authority is how that looks in practice. So, the Bible's very clear about family and how it's supposed to be ordered, right? Anybody want to tell me who's in charge? The man, the husband, right? In creation, when Eve sinned, right, and their name shall be called Adam, it's all under Adam. We know that's the fall of man, right? It wasn't just Eve's, you never hear it's not Eve, it's Adam, because Adam is the final, he's in charge, and then it's the wife, and then it's the children, right? So why do you think God did it that way? Anybody have any ideas? Why isn't it co-equal? That's what society would say. It should be 50-50, right? Helen?
It's a man case with his brain and love it and how they can implement it.
Interesting. He has a whole section in his book where he talked about that, because he said women rely on their intuition. Everybody's heard of womanly intuition, and you got to go with your wife's intuition is what he had always heard. That's why she's your helpmeet, because she gives you extra insight and intuition, and she always knows which way to go. But Eve was the one that ate the apple or fruit or pomegranate or grapes or whatever it is. So do you believe in womanly intuition? No. I believe in gut. I think men and women have gut feelings. Like if you feel like something's dangerous or whatever, I go with that. I'm like, if I don't feel like I should do that, I don't do that. I'm not going to take a chance, right? I go with my gut. But I don't think that it's anything that's unique to womanhood, that we have some sort of special intuition or anything. I do believe that God is a God of order, right? He likes everything done decently in order. Can you have a company with 2 CEOs? You can, but it's gonna cause some problems, right? Yeah, you can't. A house divided, you're gonna have a whole lot of problems. So I think that the reason why God created a hierarchy is because somebody has to be ultimately responsible, right? And that would be the husband. So you have to accept and acknowledge that you are under the God-ordained protection of your husband. We here in our society and the ways that people think and the way that we've been conditioned is that it's 50-50. I've actually heard I went to a marriage seminar where it was like, okay, so God's hierarchy is the husband's in charge and the wife and then the children. So the husband and wife make all the decisions, and it should be 51-49 is what they said. And I was like, I don't know, it's just I think it was the opinion of the person talking. There's nothing biblical about 5149 or anything. Or he gets the fine. What they're trying to say is you should get as much input as you possibly can, but when it comes right down to it, you got to let him make that decision. And I understand the reasoning to that. But I think if we show more respect, and the more that we respect them in the way that they want to be respected, the more they love us, they'll want our input. But ultimately, the decisions have to be made by that final. Somebody has to give an account. The husband in God's economy will give an account for the family. He's going to stand up before the Lord Jesus Christ, straight white with throne judgment, and he's going to say, how did you lead your family? Not how did your wife lead your family, right? You are not being judged for your leadership. Like, I know particular women who are like, if I let my husband lead, we'll be in the poorhouse, or we'll be, he's not a good leader. And in some cases, that might be true. I know lots of women who have better leadership skills than their husbands do. But you're not going to be, like, when the family is judged, it's not going to be like, okay, which one of you was the better leader? She was. Okay, how did you lead the family? It's not going to be that way. He will be judged for his leadership. You will be judged for your fellowship. So even if he leads the family down the wrong way and you end up in the poorhouse, if you did it respectfully unto God, God's gonna cherish that because you did it unto him. And the thing about it is most husbands won't do that. The problem is we don't let them, and then they don't get an opportunity to practice leadership. So I know a lot of guys that got married later in life and they lived with their mom and dad till they were, my middle brother's this way. He got married when he was like 29, 30 years old. And my mom was sweet, but she was a mom. She got up every morning, made us all different food for breakfast. I mean, she like waited on everybody hand and foot. So he got married and he expected his wife to do the same thing. A lot of heated fellowship on that. But the thing was, like, she kind of just took over. She had a daughter already, so she was a mom. So she just started mothering him like she mothered, and they ended up divorced because he never learned how to lead. Like, there was a lot of criticism, and she would push and he would pull, and it was just a mess. And she didn't let him make mistakes. I think you got to let your husband, if they lead and fail, that's how you learn, right? So if you go, I'm not going to let him fail, I'm going to lead, I'm going to help him make these decisions, then he's never going to learn in order to be the leader that he needs to be. So we need to think about that. What is that percentage? Is it 51, 40, 49 in our family? Or, do you need to step back and stop leading your family? So no smoothly running company can have two heads. You're setting up for failure if you do that. So, one of the things that I wanted to talk about in this one was understanding the way that we look at things and how it can be deflating. He talks in the book about standing on your husband's air hose for him standing on your air hose. And he gave two examples of two couples where the same sort of situation came up and the wives responded differently to the situation. And I thought they were really good. So I'm going to go ahead and give them to us, trying to make sure I get out right in an hour. So, but the chapter heading was called How to Deflate a Husband in 7 Words. So there's a couple and they've got some friends in their church, and their friends built a brand new house from scratch, from the bottom up. And the house is finally done. You know how you got somebody and the house is done and they're so excited and they want everybody to come see it. So they invited 2 couples, the ones that built the house and the ones that we're talking about right now, and they come to see the new house. And they're going through the house, and it's beautiful, and everything's brand new, right? All the fixtures, and they're going through and they're showing, and they've got this room and this kind of tile and that kind of countertop. And as they're walking through, they're just like, it just keeps going. It's such a beautiful house. And they're happy. The lady's happy for her friend because these are their friends, and they're so excited. And they get done, and as soon as they finish the tour of this beautiful new home, the visiting wife looks at her husband and she says, "Man, you need to get a second job." She was kidding. She was joking. And she didn't think twice about the remark. The other couple laughed and they went on with their business, but it completely deflated her husband. He just, all the air went out of him. She didn't even realize it. It was an offhanded joke, but it did call into question these areas, right? His conquest, how he provides, right? His hierarchy, like she's telling him, you're not doing enough, right? So I think that particular story, I don't even think that she hardly understood what she said. And we all kind of like go, ooh, because I think I might have done that before. And you can see that happen with your husband when you say something and you see that deflation, the air hose stomp thing, when you see that happen, usually in one of these areas. So on the opposite side of it, in the book, it also tells the story of a wife who had the right heart, respectful attitude toward her husband. At his wife's funeral, Dr. E.B. Hill shared a story about his wife, Jane, who built him up instead of tearing him down. When they first started out in ministry, times were very hard. He frequently would skip paychecks. You know, when you're starting something, you have to start from the ground floor up. So one day he came home and the lights were off in the house and he didn't think much about it. He walked in and his wife, Jane, met him at the door and she said, tonight we're going to have candlelight dinner for two. And they hadn't been married too long and he got all excited. He thought, that's such a cool idea. So he went into the bathroom to wash up and when he flipped the light switch, nothing happened. He washed his hands. He went out in the bedroom and he walked in there and he flipped the light switch. Nothing happened. And he walked out into the living room and he said, hey, Jane, why aren't the lights working? And she looked up at him and tears were all in her eyes. And she said, you worked so hard and we just did not have enough money this month to pay the bill. I didn't want you to find out about it and be discouraged. So I thought we could have dinner by candlelight. When I heard this is like female reaction. Guys would be like, oh. But he stood there, and Dr. Hill, when he was talking at the funeral, he said, she could have complained. She could have completely broken my spirit and demoralized me. But instead, she said, somehow we'll find a way to get these lights back on. But in the meantime, let's have dinner by candlelight. And I just thought that was the coolest story ever. Because that's not how I would react to it. I think I've been in that situation a few times, like, what is happening with these bills? And, you get all frustrated and everything. But she had respect, and she did not want to tear down his conquests and his authority, right? And she wanted to build him up instead. So I just thought that was beautiful. What are some ways like that where we can show our respect toward hierarchy and authority? It's a little bit harder because they're a little bit less specific. But he said, don't scoff at the idea of looking up to your husband as the leader. He needs to know that you accept and respect his position as the leader in the family, right? Have you ever really thought about, how much do you agree? Are you comfortable with your husband leading? If you're one of those blessed people that are very comfortable, that's a good thing that you could put in, just I was thinking about it and I don't worry because I know that you are leading our family the right way. You're not perfect, but I respect that you've taken the authority to do that, right? And that'll help. So he talked about that. He said when financial troubles arise, quietly, without shaming him, do your part to support him and offer solutions. Don't openly disagree with him in front of others or in front of the children. Don't correct him in public. Pastor, we like to talk in our family. We do this number. Because when I have discussions, you'll see somebody in my family go, because I am terrible. Everything has to be correct with me. I'm very OCD. And if you use a word wrong or you say something that's not right, like if you tell a story and you said last May and it happened in January, I will interrupt you and make sure everyone knows that happened in January, right? And I just do that. And in our family, they have a thing now and they'll look at me and they'll go like this, which means unnecessary correction. Did not have anything to do with the story, was not necessary to openly correct my husband in front of other people, right? In the early days of our ministry, I'd sit down there and listen to him preach. If he used a word wrong or said a name wrong, I would be like, and I would throw him off because my reactions are like, I can't hide what I'm thinking. And he had a guy's name and it was French, and his name was Jacques Vallée. He talks about Jacques Vallée, right? And he used to call him Jacques or something. He would pronounce it phonetically like an American, and I'm just down there going, and I'm like, I found the time, I waited. The last time he did it, I let it go for a long time, and then I just waited until a few weeks after, and I'm like trying to find a reason to talk about French pronunciations. Like, have you ever heard the song Frère Jacques? Jacques, not Jacques. So don't do it when it's less direct. Don't do it right then. Like, just sit in the, don't do that. So don't openly correct him, right, in public, or do unnecessary corrections. State your opinions reasonably. Don't remove his leadership by taking over. And praise the good decisions that he makes. We sometimes take those for granted, right? All right, so that is hierarchy and authority. The next one is insight. And then down to the end here. Insight. Let's see, I have that on here. His desire to analyze and to counsel. Okay, when you talk to your husband, you just want to be listened to. When he hears you talking to him, he just wants to solve all your problems, right? So you talk to your friends, you can sit there and just talk and talk and talk. You talk to your husband, and they'll be like, oh, that's terrible that happened to you. Like, you talk to your husband, he'll start going, okay, this is how you fix that. This is how you fix that. And you have to realize that that's what he does. He will analyze and counsel. He's going to tell you what to do. And if you don't want to know that, then you probably ought to call your mom or something. Or tell him on the front end. He does this, Dr. Eggerichs does it, tell him, I don't need an answer, I just want to share, right? So, insight. Modern culture has made all of the moms in all of the families brilliant. Absolutely the only one that knows what's going on, right? And all the dads are stupid. They're all dumb. If you look at all the shows, the dads are all dumb. We used to have the father knows best, and now we have the mom running everything. And it's just the way that it is. And it's not the way that it should be. In reality, neither spouse is infallible. We're going to make mistakes. He's going to make mistakes. Everybody's going to make mistakes. It's just that our mistakes are easier to overlook, right? So we have to realize men are natural-born fixers. When we want to vent, he's probably not going to just listen. He's going to try and solve all of your problems. So you have to understand that. And then Dr. Eggerichs, in this chapter of the book, he said something. This was one of the things that I walked away with, and it really hurt a little bit. So I'm going to share it with you. He said, he deals a whole chapter dealing with a big area that women are deceiving themselves today. He said, and that's a wife's criticism of her husband for lack of spiritual leadership in the family. Many Christian women are dissatisfied. They want their husbands to lead their family spiritually or to be a better spiritual leader. And while that's very noble, and all of us, none of us are perfect, and we all want to be better, but we want our husbands to lead in that way. He said that your honest desire for your husband to be the spiritual leader of your home, if it's a conviction, that will please God. But your contempt toward your husband for not being what you think that he should be can also grieve him. So that might be something that you might think and pray for your husband in your head, but it should never be something that you say to him out loud. I wish you would. I wish you would do this, or I wish you would do that. Never out loud. Because that could grieve the Holy Spirit. You have to ask yourself, do I have an attitude of self-righteousness, at least to some degree? You may well believe that you are the better person in your relationship and that he needs to change. And that's something that he talked about that really hit me between the eyes, because as a woman, my personality is a lot more patient and a lot more, it's just my personality. Now, my daughter has my husband's personality. So she's completely impatient. She goes nuts in traffic, I'll just drive along. It's just I'm just laid back. I'm a laid back person, and I don't get angry very often. But I have been sitting next to my husband in the car where, like, we come up on a train, you know, where the train thing comes and the train thing goes down. We're waiting, and the train goes, and he's getting antsy, and I'm just having a conversation, enjoying myself, you know. And then it'll go in reverse and go back. And then it'll sit. By the time, I mean, we're sitting there, and he's just getting more and more. And I've done it. I don't do it anymore. But I've done it where I'm like, I don't understand why that bothers you so much. That's because my personality doesn't bother me. His personality, it really bothers him. But I honestly thought in this situation, I am more spiritual than you are. Because I don't have the temper that you have, right? And that's an area where I have to understand that might be so. But he has, we all have good and bad in our lives. Like, he is one of those people, if you teach him something biblically, or he'll take things like this. You know, I've gone to lots and lots of sessions and stuff, and I'll write things down. I'll go home, never implement them. My husband will go home and he will start working on it. He is so practically, he's gifted at putting everything into practice that he reads about. And I've read so much stuff and I don't do it, or I'll forget about it. And like months later, I have to reread things like books like this. I have to pick it up. Oh yeah, that book was good. I gotta get it in front of my head to get me to think about it. Whereas he will make a habit and keep it, and that's so annoying. Very annoying for me. But we tend to have attitudes of self-righteousness, not maybe about him altogether as a person, but in certain areas we can too. So you need to stop and think about that. Is that something that you might be guilty of? So are you trying to be your husband's Holy Spirit, is what he said. So, because we're the only one who constantly seems to be on top of things, right? Because of correcting the children, you know, we can slip into that with our husbands. We go from mom mode, where we're dealing with them, trying to help the kids be better. We just turn around and we're doing this out of trying to help, trying to be a help. But he looks at it without realizing it. He can look at it as disrespect. It's often subconscious, very subtle, but he can feel it. So you have to stop. You're not going to change him that way. So that's insight. The next one would be relationship. Okay, this one's fun. This is something where I wanted to share with you that I did not realize. But it should make sense to us, but we just don't think, because we think about how we think about things. Relationship for men and women is totally different. When you see two men sitting together in a coffee shop, number one, they're awkward and uncomfortable because they're sitting with another guy, and that just bothers them. They don't like that. You see two women in the coffee shop, and they're just like, oh, just happy, having a good time. Was that good? You know, trying things, having long conversations, touchy-feely love. It's just great. You see two men, they're just like awkwardly sitting there quietly, drinking their coffee, and just get out of here as soon as possible. Because men and women, relationship is different for them. Men need shoulder-to-shoulder friendship. Okay, so write that down. It says his desire for shoulder-to-shoulder. Underline it and highlight it. Because this is something that you're going to work on. When we're with men, it has to be totally different than when we're with women. Women are all about relationship. Men are all about companionship. The Bible said it's not good for man to be alone. He does not want to be alone. Even when my husband's doing an alone thing like reading, right? He reads tons of books. He goes out, he has his little spot in the front with his tea, and he's got his book and he's reading, and he'll call me. He'll go, come in here. And so I'll come in here expecting a conversation, and he just picks up his book and starts reading again. And I'm like, why did you call me in here? I didn't want to be by myself. Like, well, tell me about what you're reading. Well, I'm in the middle of what I'm reading. But it's not about, he just wants you to be with him, and little or no talking is what he wants, right? Sometimes it means he wants me to bring him something, but most times he just wants me to be with him, right? So he just wants me to be there. He'd just be in the room. So that is what husbands desire. And I thought about this because my husband's a reader, but the other things that he does in his life, I try to put this into practice. Dr. Eggridge said, find ways that you can just be with your husband and for no reason, not for a particular purpose. So he said, if your husband is a woodworker, likes to work with his hands, and he has got like his little shed or his man cave or whatever it is where he does his stuff. He said, I knew a woman one time, and he goes, it was in the town that I grew up in, and her husband was a mechanic, and he would do all of his stuff outside, and she would come out. He's like, every day I would walk home from school, and she'd be out sitting. She would just sit on the little stool there next to him while he was working on the car. And she'd file her nails, or she'd have something to do, some little thing to do, but she was just with him all day while he was working on the cars. And he said they stayed together forever because she didn't do anything, talk to him really. She was just there for him, watching what he was doing. And he took that as admiration and respect for his job and what he was doing, right? And so when I was thinking about that myself, and I got an idea, right? You all know my husband goes to a gym, right? Is there anybody in here that doesn't know of it? Once again, we're all contractually obligated to bring this up at some point. My husband goes to a gym, and he is super, I hate to say it, proud of what he does at the gym. It's something that he finds. Now, I go to the gym, but I go to meet people and talk to people. I do the healthy stuff, but I'm there because Cynthia's going to be there. Yeah. Or somebody's going to be there. We're going to have fun together. It's going to make it less horrible. Joel goes to the gym to be abused by Dale, his PT guy. And it's horrible. And he will come home. He had been coming home for a while I was reading this book. He's coming home for a while. He's telling me, and I'm listening with engaged interest, but he would tell me every little thing that he did there. And he would get really like, I did this. And I'd be like, that's amazing. That's really cool. One day after I read this chapter in here, I decided, I'm like, I'm going to do this. I go to the gym real early in the morning, 7:45. His PT is like 11 or something. And I knew I needed to go to Detweiler's. So I went by Detweiler's, and I'm like, you know what? I'm going to swing in here and I'm going to watch him at the gym. So I pull up into the parking lot and I get out, and he comes over. He's like, is everything okay? I'm like, yeah, I just wanted to come by and watch you. Wouldn't go get the photos, really. And he walks back in. I'm just going to sit over here. You tell me all the time about all the stuff Dale's doing. I just wanted to come and see what you could do, Okay. He walks in there and he's talking to Dale. He's like, what's your wife doing here? She came to watch me. Dale goes, he's like, well, let's give her a show, right? He pushed him hard. And I could tell my husband, I knew he was going to hurt for like 3 weeks afterwards. But he went to this, here's his normal level. Well, Dale actually said something to me later. He goes, I'm going to have all the wives come and watch their husbands do PT. Because he just turned it on. It feeds something in their ego. And I don't know why, but it totally worked. And for 2 weeks after, he was really excited. And he was doing dishes and helping me around the house and everything. And he'll say every once in a while, maybe you should come and watch me again. And it's just I'm like, wow, this stuff, it seems, I'm like, how could doing nothing but just sitting here watching when I have other things I need to be doing? See, that's the problem with us, because a typical wife will have real problems just sitting around doing nothing when she has so many things that she's got to do, right? We all have our standards of cleanliness in our house, right? And when we know there's dishes in there, but we're just sitting with them in the living room, there's something about it where, you feel like, oh, I'm wasting my time. But if you're always on the kids and on your husband about picking up, washing up, shaping up, cleaning up, have you ever thought that you might not be coming across as friendly, right? Men and children are not bothered by how clean the house is, right? When the standards aren't met, that's all in us. We're bothered by that. But would you rather have a clean house, or would you rather have a happy family? So we have to stop and think and be patient when he just wants to sit there and do nothing. So I'm going to give you homework to find a way to go home and do nothing with your husband. Shoulder to shoulder companionship. So that's what you're going to do on this section. What are you going to do to show respect? You're going to find a way to spend time together, and you're going to try it. You're not going to try it once and just let it go. You're going to try it a few times over the course of the month, right? Is it too much to ask us to do something that feels unnatural. It will feel unnatural. I felt so weird going to the gym to watch I'm like sitting on the floor, crisscross applesauce watching him. And I had to like really pay attention because I really wanted to check my phone, right? Really wanted to get on Township and find out if I had any crops that needed to be harvested or something. I'm a gamer, by the way. I play lots of games. I'm like, I could just check this out, while he's not looking. But no, just really engage, right? So find a way for shoulder-to-shoulder companionship. And I think that the possible benefits are worth it. So I want you to try that. So you're going to write your respect letter, and you're going to try and find a way to experience shoulder-to-shoulder companionships with your husband. And if you get a chance to look up on YouTube with Love and Respect, Dr. Eggert's is really good at ideas on how and what this looks like. So if you want to follow that up with some more insight. Okay, the last one, very last one, and it's coming. These are the ways your husband finds respect, right? Sexuality. All right. He saved the best one for last, and I'm going to talk about it. And it's going to be really uncomfortable. Like when I was doing this, I was like, this looks so good. This is going to be such a good class. And then I got down to where I was actually doing it. I'm like, I'm going to talk about this with everybody. This is going to be rough. All right. So let me find my spot because I want to stay on script here. 4, 5, 6. Yeah, no, he's read the book. He's reading the book. So, all right. So, problems in the bedroom. It's very important to men, and it starts out very important to ladies. All you newlywed ladies, and you're all like, "Oh, this is great. We can talk about sexuality." Well, it's never a problem until you start having kids, and a life, and jobs, and a home that you have to clean, and more kids, and then you start hitting a point in life where your libido crashes and things, and you're tired all the time. And that's where we start having disagreements, right? So problems in the bedroom are ultimately going to lead to two things in your marriage, right? It's either going to be a marriage full of tension because needs are not met, or your marriage is going to become extremely dull and boring. So these are the only two options when there's no respect for sexuality for your husband. So we're either going to have a lot of tension, a lot of bickering, a lot of fighting, or an extremely dull and boring. This is where you get those roommates, people that live together, they're married, but they're just kind of roommates. A wife's need for intimacy in the marriage is met through affection and communication. That's just the way that we're built. Whereas a husband's need for intimacy in the relationship is just sex. That's all there is to it. In the book, he talks about a mom, and a mom gave advice. A lot of you, it'd be interesting if I could sit down and ask you what your mom said to you before you got married, or before you entered that season of your life where this was going to be an issue. I've heard some crazy doozy stories. My mom was an older, she had me when she was 36, and I have two older brothers that are 10 and 6 years older than me. So I was the accident child and the only girl. So she was worn out and she was tired, and she was in that season of her life. How I got there, I have no idea, because she was in that season of her life where she was tired, and she had this kind of attitude where it's just it's just something you have to do. It's just a duty. Grin and bear it. Only that's great, Mom. Wonderful. But he talks about a mother who told her daughter, this was her basic thing. She listened to her daughter complain. He's just all, and just this, he's always just wants this all the time. And she said, why would you deprive him of something that takes such a short amount of time and makes him so happy? And her daughter just looked at her, and it's true, okay? I think it's good advice. When it comes down to it, we're all just tired. It's the end of the day, for Pete's sake, and I just need some sleep. And we put our needs above his needs, and that's all there is to it. This one is a hard for me one too, because I'm one of those people. I'm not a good actress. Just like I told you earlier, you can see on my face whatever I'm thinking. Like when he's preaching and he says something wrong, and if I'm tired, I look tired. If I'm not in the mood to do anything, I can't work it up. I'm not an actress. I'm not good at it. I'm trying. I'm working on it. It's been 28 years of marriage, and I'm working on trying. Because you can also put across the thing where it's a chore. It's just something that you have to do and check off the list just to keep him happy. And that's not going to make him feel respected either. So it's not just withholding. A lot of wives, you'd be astounded at the amount of women that I've heard in counseling when you talk about how little this goes on. You'd be astounded at it's been months, kind of thing. And you're like, oh, the poor husband, But sometimes it might be regular, but it's more like just something that it's a chore that I have to do. So it's something that we have to work. If we put it off or make it into a chore, we're putting our marriage at risk. Every woman I know whose husband has left her because he strayed to a woman that made him feel wanted, right? And even if that does not happen in your marriage, if you continue to have your own way, your marriage has become a marriage that's just being roommates, and it's dull and boring and dry. And you'd never know what you're missing until it's gone, right? So you need to think about that. Most important thing to you is his love for you that's shown through affection and through talking and sharing. If your husband cut that off and didn't do that anymore, if he shut down that side of the relationship and never spoke to you, you'd be unhappy. So his basic need for intimacy is through sex. So if you shut that down or make it a chore or a routine, then he's going to be unhappy. So the only option he has is to shut down what you want, and that would be love and connection. So this is how that cycle can work, that crazy cycle can work when it comes to sexual intimacy. You reach a stalemate and you shut down, and that's not what you want. So fixing that is not easy. He doesn't talk a lot about it in the book because it's not something that you can, when I ask, how can we show respect? Well, you just need to get in there and show some respect, right? So how do you do that? It's not easy. It's not something, especially if you've been in that cycle for such a long time that you're like, this shouldn't be an issue. He just needs to change, right? You have to, it requires a total change in the way that you think about it. It requires a willingness to accept that this is the way that he's built. It's the way that he thinks. It's not bad. It's not desperate or dirty. It's just his natural state of being. It's how he is. I do know of books that can help with this. So if this is a situation that you're dealing with, I have a book that I recommend to ladies. And I do it on the sly because it's a book from way back in the 1970s. And has anybody ever seen Fried Green Tomatoes? When Kathy Bates answers the door in the cellophane outfit. It came from this book. It was a huge thing in the 70s and 80s. And I'm just going to tell you, it's called The Total Woman. And you will not see it. It's by a woman named Maribel Morgan. You will not see it anymore. I look at Goodwills, thrift bookstores. There's a place online where it's like old books and stuff, and I'll get it. And she's a Christian, but it's not like rooted in Bible or anything. It's just basically it's one of those how to reignite the romance in your relationship. And she gives you a lot of really practical ideas. It is very uncomfortable. When women come to me and they're like, well, we're having problems in that area, I will go, here, read this book. And I gave it to a young girl who got married. I gave it to her. She had a baby. And that's usually what does it. I'm tired. I need to sleep, and she's like, but he's driving me nuts. And so I said, read this book. And she's out of state, and she would send me, I would get texts every once in a while. Miss Christie. She would never say anything. She would that's all she'd say. And I'm like, what chapter are you on? So it's a really it's an interesting book. It was recommended to me at Bible college, and it's a book that I have to go back and reread every once in a while, just in order to try and keep it in the front of your mind. All of this is stuff that you guys probably know. I mean, he laid it out in a way that you can think about it. But what it is this things that you know. You know that you need to defer to his authority. You know this work is important to him. You know each and every one of these. What we want to do with deep dives and things like this is to keep it in front of you. Because what happens is you know it, you go out and you live your life and you forget it. It's not in practice. But the more I can get it in front of you and you touch on it every once in a while, you tap it. You just, like, every once in a while, I will go back and find books like this that I liked and reread them just because I'm that kind of person. If it's not in front of me, I'm not thinking about it. So that's what the homeworks are for. That's what, and following up and listening to what he's got online. If you just Google YouTube, Love and Respect, you can listen to him and he'll tell more stories and get deeper into it. So you can follow up with that. But that is how you show respect to your husband. So I want you to write him a respect letter. This is your homework. Say something like, figure out one of these that you respect about your husband. Sit down. Sometimes you're going to have to sit and think really hard. It might not be a lot that, maybe you're like, you've been disrespecting him for so long that it's hard to think of something but if you sit and you think about it, there are things that you admired about him. You married him at one point, right? So there's got to be something. So I want you to think about it and write something that says, I was thinking about the way that you do this or the way that you do that, or how you would, one of the things that he says, can't think of anything else, we talked about that, how your husband would take a bullet for you, would die for you. I believe that my husband would. And that's something that I really respect about him. So if you wrote that and you gave it to him, it might feel weird, and it might, like what Pastor says, if it's awkward, you're probably doing it right? But don't say, I love you for that. Say, I respect you. I really respect how you work for our family. I really respect how you lead our family spiritually, how you do things, particular things that he does, whether he leads the family in prayer, whenever we go for a trip, Joel will stop before we even get out of the driveway and he'll pray. And I'll say that I really respect that about you. I think it's good for our children to see. Because ultimately, that's what, when I asked my daughter if she was going to be here, because I didn't want to talk about, I went through sexuality real quick, but I didn't want to talk about it with Anna sitting right there. I was like, are you coming? She said, well, I want to come. She goes, but this was so cool. She said, I lived this. I know this stuff because I've watched you and Dad. And I was like, that's so sweet. So reading it, doing it, yeah, Kayla's going, she's sucking up, man. And that might be true, but it worked. So, but doing these things and practicing these things, it helps me to keep it in front of me and to constantly go back. And so these are for a box of 20, are $4.99 at Walmart. So if you do something like this and you see that he responds to it in a positive way, you can send them more frequently because they work. So show respect and find time for shoulder-to-shoulder contact, right? And be respectful to your husbands in these areas. And that's pretty much it. Okay, I'm going to close this out in prayer. Dear Heavenly Father,